Good morning. Good morning. What is going on, guys? It is Friday, 2:59 a.m. I'm on my way to the gym right now, and I'm gonna share something with you. I'm gonna share something with you that's biblical and is actual. And if you're not versed in scripture, biblical history, this is going to be a little bit far for you to fetch, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyways, because I just finished praying and my prayer was fairly strong. It was a fairly strong prayer. And as I'm getting ready to walk through the garage and go to the car, I started thinking about something about my finances, something about my financing, something along the line of finances, right? Finances are typically our issue, are typically the matter of concern in our mind. And I'm thinking, I've always been provided for. And just kind of feel me on this. And I know I sound repetitive, but don't you remember those times when it felt like you couldn't get through that issue? And then magically, some way, somehow, it worked out. In the storm, in the middle of it, there was crying, there was weeping, there was doubt, fear, whatever it was. Whether it was financial, whether it was a relationship, whatever the case was. Lost a job. And you felt like the world was going to end. Now, I haven't lost my train of thought. I'm not rambling on. I'm getting to a point. And you felt like this is it. I quit. It doesn't get any worse than this. I remember when I was sentenced, the judge gave me 2 8.5-year sentences. How do you deal with that when you're 16, 17 years old? How do you fathom what's just been told to you? This isn't like, do over. It's not like, you know what, I think, I made a mistake. Let me try to do it this way. No, you're at the judgment table, and the judge just says, I'm giving you 2 8.5-year sentences. Or what about you lost the job, right? They call you in, everything's going good. They call you in, they say, we gotta let you go, bro. We gotta let you go. Sorry. We just gotta do it. Or what about when your kid was really, really, really sick? I've been there when, both our youngest, Malachi too, maybe, not really so much, but our youngest, because, they say that the death rate is even higher in a child up to the age of, I want to say 6 or 6. It's high. It starts to go lower the older they get. With these real high worried. Wouldn't eat. And when you're used to seeing your kids run around and play and they won't eat, they not laughing, they just wanna lay there, that's concern. But I'll fast forward because if not, I'll be talking all day. You don't ever remember them getting better. You remember them being sick. You remember getting fired. You remember all this. But you don't remember getting over it. But you can remember smiling again. Ain't that funny? The memories of the pain are very much alive. But yet the pain and the process of the recovery is very faint. So the Bible talks about when the Israelites went out and they left Egypt. Remember, they were slaves in Egypt. And finally Moses said, you know what? I got a word from God. And dude, this ain't the business. We got to go. We got to go, and we got to go now. And the Israelites was like, all right, man, let's make a run. Let's do it. I'm about it. I'm about that life. Right? I'm about that life. So they pack up all their stuff. And they say, all right, this is it for now. We're done. We're going to go to the place that God promised us. And what God will do is, if you're obedient. See, here's the kicker. And if I can remember this, will probably serve as a very powerful weapon. Because see, when the storm comes, not everybody acts like Tom Brady in the pocket and gets all comfortable and calm. When the storm comes, people start freaking out, forgetting shelter. So when you're obedient, God says, I'll provide you temporary provisions. I will provide you temporary provisions. And this is what got my whole thinking going earlier as I was getting in the car and leaving. Temporary provisions. In every single situation you done been through, there was a temporary provision. It felt like you were going to run out of money, but then a temporary provision came in. It felt like your child was going to be sick forever and not make it. Then a temporary provision came in. Temporary provisions are just that. I'll give you an analogy, like military, like MREs, the military rations that they give you. They're intended to be stored away in a backpack. You can pull it out, take a little, get something to eat, and keep on going. Temporary provisions. Too many times we look at the temporary provision and we never take into consideration that this temporary provision is here simply so that we can survive while we are preparing for the full blessing. See, the Israelites left Egypt, and Moses said, come on, we got to go. They got in the middle of the desert and started complaining. Don't that sound like a lot of people? The moment something don't go exactly the way that they planned, not God plans, exactly the way they planned, what's the first thing they start doing? Complaining. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Everybody's pointing fingers. Everybody's at each other's throat. But the plan hadn't completely unfolded. They were still going through a process. Because see, God was taking them out of somewhere where they were prisoners, and taking them to somewhere where they would never have to want again. But he said, can you handle the process? Mind you, these thoughts are just now coming to me. So can you handle the process? Can you take the bitter with the sweet? So they start complaining about food and provisions. God said, no problem, I hear you. So he starts dropping manna from the sky. The manna is intended to be temporary. He drops it from the sky. They gather it up, and they're supposed to eat and keep moving. He says, hey, I get it. You got to eat. I know you can't get to where I promised you would go if you can't eat and you're in the middle of the desert, the wilderness. Here's some manna. Drops the manna. Instead of being thankful, eating to gather up strength and keep on moving, these fools try to take the manna. They try to take the manna that was only temporary. They try to get these big old bags, stick all the manna in there so that they would have extra saved up for later, because they didn't trust that God would provide again. So they wanted to try to hoard the temporary. They wanted to try to hoard the temporary. God says, all right, I'll show you. Because see, what they tried to do was settle. They tried to settle for the manna when God had more than that in store for them. And that's what we do sometimes. We settle for the temporary provisions that God has for us, and then we wonder why we don't ever see our breakthrough. Because we always stopping short of the promise. We always settling for the little bit. I'm saying all this to say there's a reason it always felt like you were broke, but for some way, somehow, that bill ended up getting paid. That repair ended up happening. That child ended up healed. your electricity wasn't off forever, that there was food that was in the refrigerator, is because God is going to keep continuously providing along the way. But now God is sitting there saying, all right, I'm giving you the temporary provisions to get to the next level. Whereas we're trying to store up the temporary provisions forever and staying stuck in the same place. God gave you that 1999 Toyota Corolla to get from point A to point B to make a difference so that you could get to that 2019 Lexus hybrid. But you just want to keep the 19. You want to stay still with temporary. So now I'm thinking, as I'm coming out the house, I'm thinking, there's been times when I've had so much money, and when I say so much money, I mean for my mind and for what I can conceive and for what I was able to do with these two hands was a lot. And God was dropping manna down to me. Temporary provisions. And I was treating it like it was the permanent spot. That's why you should never be in a state of lack or scarcity. Because it makes you take temporary provisions and treat it like it's everything. It makes you treat that apartment you're living in like there's not a mansion waiting for you. It makes you treat that little car that's barely getting by as if the only thing you have, so you hold on to it so tight you don't want to let nobody else drive it. You don't want to you're not looking at other vehicles. You're just constantly worried about this one because you don't believe that there's bigger and better available for you. If you notice something, if you're still breathing, that you are constantly being provided for. But what you need to come to a conclusion about, are you providing temporary provisions, or are you really at the spot in life that God has intended for you to be at? Because I have to keep saying, excuse me, for as many checks as I get, I don't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. So I'm going to keep calling it temporary until I feel like this is the blessing. And I know the blessing is big. The thing is, while you're in temporary and while you're in transition and while you're in the process and while the manna, and I keep referring to manna as a temporary provision, manna, while the temporary provision is being provided for you, the intention is that you don't get weary. On your way to what's promised to you. You don't get weary on the way to what is promised to you. But here's the caveat. Are you ready for the blessing that is coming on your life? See, you can probably keep receiving temporary provisions until you're ready. I seen an article yesterday while I was at the grocery store, and it said Justin Bieber on suicide watch. You already know the National Enquirer is really the real news. Because it seems like no sooner than they post something, like it happens. Literally. The news is still speculating on whether it's going to rain. National Enquirer is telling you all the real deal. And it said Justin Bieber is on suicide watch. See, even God recognizes that he could give something into somebody's hands too quick, too fast, and they're not ready. But oh, in God's mind, maybe he was just giving you an example of what it would feel like if he was to give it to you right now and you weren't ready. See that old saying, everybody wants heaven, but nobody wants to die. Everybody wants riches, but nobody wants what comes with it. Can you fathom what comes with it? If you've never been rich, if you've never been wealthy, if you've never been successful, then no, you cannot. God is going to continue to provide your temporary provisions. He's going to keep providing you enough until he sees that you're ready for what's really waiting for you. But make no mistakes, just like the Israelites, it's very realistic and very possible that you can roam around this whole earth for the rest of your life thinking that your temporary provisions was all that you had coming to you, and all because you failed to rise to the occasion. All because you failed to rise to the occasion. Are you going to rise to the occasion, or are you going to stay getting the temporary? That's a decision that you have to make.